Welcome back to Conquering College. I'm Jeff Anderson. In this video, we're going to talk about the all work and no play trap, which happens when we create a schedule that's too demanding, that requires too much. So, in order to think about the all work and no play traps, we have to realize our time constraint. And one of the most important time constraints per week is 168 hours. That's the total number of hours that you have in a week. It's 24 hours a day times 7 days a week. That's it. Out of that 168 hours per week, I like to think that there are kind of two activities. One of them is the amount of time that you spend asleep, and the other is the amount of time that you spend awake. I will encourage everyone, anybody that wants to achieve their academic goals, plan to get 56 hours of sleep a week. Maybe a little less, maybe a little more, but that's about 8 hours a night, 7 days a week. When you're learning and pushing yourself, it is hard. It takes a lot of mental energy, and rest is paramount, super important to that process. If we assume 56 hours a week asleep, that means that we have a total of 112 hours to do everything else. That's 168 minus 56. So this is what we're working with in that scenario. The reason that I like to use that 55-hour cutoff is because 55 hours represents about half of my waking life. 55 divided by 112 is about 0.5. The other thing about 55 hours is it represents 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's a full-time job with 0 days off per week. Remember that this 55 hours included 4 types of activities. It included time on extracurriculars, time working at a part-time or full-time job, all the time that you spend in class, and then the amount of time that you spend studying outside of class. Let's talk about how you might decrease the number, whatever it is. If it's above 55, that's an issue. How can we decrease that? First thing we might do is decrease our involvement in extracurricular activities. Now, in order to do this, what I would encourage you to do is decide which of your extracurricular activities is really important to you. Which one can you not give up? Once you've identified those, figure out what's the minimum time commitment you want to spend on that, right? Not optimally, but what is minimum? What can you do and be satisfied with, and then no more than that? Because remember, we're trying to get us to a place where we can achieve academic success. Be prepared to rearrange your weekly activities in order to allow yourself the time for that extracurricular activities while maintaining your excellence in your academic life. Another thing you might do with your extracurricular activities is to decide which of them can be put on pause. Sometimes in a quarter, there are things that we want to do, but when you're striving to achieve your academic goals, this takes dedication and sacrifice. It's hard. And when it's the case that your extracurricular is not going to support that, put it on pause for a bit. Once you've decided to do that, contact the necessary people and then update your weekly schedule. So that's how might we decrease our weekly time commitments from extracurriculars. Next thing we might do is decrease the amount of time that we work. If you have the option to do this, that's really nice. One thing to do in this situation is figure out the minimum amount of money that you need per month, right? Make sure to calculate all of your bills, expenses, and then I also encourage you to put a little bit of entertainment money so that you have a semblance of a life in there. Also be aware that when you are decreasing the amount of hours that you work, sometimes that affects healthcare and benefits. So you want to know those minimums. Figure out what the minimum number of dollars that you need per month, and then calculate that minimum number of hours that you can spend earning that money. Another way to decrease your involvement in work is to increase the amount of money that you get from scholarships and internships. A lot of times scholarships are tax-free for students, which is a great benefit. To learn more about this, you can take a look at the Get Paid to Learn video series. This is currently in production. It's not available, but keep aware in the future. Also, I would recommend that you try to maintain a cumulative GPA of above 3.5. A lot of scholarship opportunities are available and very obtainable if you have above a 3.5, so that can be very helpful. All right, we can decrease our extracurriculars, decrease our work. Third thing that we can do is reimagine our academic goals. So in the case that sometimes there are students that are working for spending money and doing extracurriculars just for fun, a lot of times if you're super serious about your academic goals, you can actually commit to being a full-time student, decrease work, decrease extracurriculars, great. However, there are some students that have to work for a living. And in this situation, when we recommend decreasing the amount of time that you work, some students will say, well, I can't do that, I need that money. In this situation, I would actually encourage you to reimagine your academic goals. So one thing you could do is lower your your desired grades for your non-major classes. So instead of going for an A in underwater basket weaving because it's a non-major class, don't worry about that. Change it to a pass, not pass. Put a very high emphasis on trying to maintain that 3.5 GPA if you can, and then also keep in mind your 10-year goals from video 1. Think about when you're setting your academic goals, which of these classes are going to help you attain your 10-year goals. Okay, the other thing that I talked about a second ago was to take a class, a non-major class, pass, not pass. Talk to an academic counselor. That can be really helpful. I use this option very often for my general education classes. It's a way that I could decrease my time commitment without having to worry about the specifics of getting an A. Also, make sure it counts towards graduation. Some colleges won't allow pass, not pass to count formally to graduation. That you can talk about that with an academic counselor. Another thing you could do is reimagine your course load. Sometimes students will take a bunch of classes because they're trying to graduate in a certain amount of time. If you really can't commit to your academic classes because you have to work to pay bills, I would encourage you to slow down a little bit. Reprioritize your timeline of graduation. Instead of doing it next year, push it out 2 or 3 years, and decrease your academic load so that you can do better in your classes. Always consult with an academic counselor, and then also think about the graduation date so that you can do well, right? Okay, so once you've done these things, decide to drop a class this quarter, which decreases the amount of time you spend in class. It also allows you to spend a little bit less time studying, and it allows you to focus on your goals. So the major thing that I would not encourage you to touch is your study hours. In video 7, I gave you video 6, excuse me, I gave you some ideas to set study hours. Unless you have a compelling reason to do so, I would not encourage you to try to decrease that. The time that you study is really where you make your grades happen. If you're serious about reaching your academic goals, you have to budget time to actually sit down and go through the process of learning. That's your study hours. Don't try to decrease it and say, oh, I'm going to continue my work, go to class, but I'm not going to spend any time studying. That's a recipe for disaster. Make sure you have time to think through the stuff that you're working through. So don't automatically decrease this unless you have time. Learning is a process, takes time, takes energy. The main focus of this whole avoiding the all work and no play trap is to do less, but do it well. Don't try to do everything. Just do a few key things, and those things focus your energy on. All right, in the next video, we're going to talk about getting your textbooks, unless you're going to go on to watch other trap videos, in which case I'll see you there.